Hi, this is Mrs. Anderson, and today I'm going to provide you a lesson on annotation, which is an important English skill that you're going to need for the rest of your high school career. As always, you can find this video on my YouTube channel, Anderson SF Lancer, if you need to rewatch it, or stop, rewind, hit pause anytime that it's necessary. So when I'm talking about annotation, I'm talking about taking notes while you read, and I want to explain to you why that's such a necessary skill. And let's start with some facts. So now that you're in high school, the summative assessments that you have are based on essays. Essays are based on literature. And in order to write the essays, you're going to have to find quotes from the literature. So annotation is really a time-saving tip. If you find quotes while you are reading, then you're going to do a better job of being able to find those quotes when you get to the end of the essay. So annotation is so important because it's active reading. It means that you need to read with a pen in hand or expect to type if you have an ebook. And active reading is important because it's little breadcrumbs, little markers that you leave in your books that you can find information quickly if you need it later. If you hate writing in your book, I'm going to recommend that you keep a separate notebook with chapters and page numbers and notes. And highlighting is not going to be enough. You also need to write why that particular highlight struck you at that moment. Now this is the point where I usually like to show one of the books that I'm currently reading and hold it up for you to be able to see the annotations that I've made in my book. But I realized that as a student, when I sat there and a teacher did that for me, I was always curious, like, why did you write that at that point? What am I supposed to be writing? So now I realize that it's a lot more helpful rather than just to say you need to annotate, to give you some ways to annotate. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give you 7 options, 7 different ways that you can annotate in your book. And the ways increase in sophistication. The beginning ones I think are the most basic and the easiest for people to do, while the later ones might require more practice or attention to detail. And I require an annotation once per page. Remember, when you have a book open, I would consider that a spread of 2 pages. So once on the left side of the spread and once on the right side of the spread. The important thing is to use the option that works best for you. And I'm sure at this point you're probably rolling your eyes and thinking, ugh, but this is going to make the reading assignments last longer. Yes, this is going to make the reading assignments take longer. I'm not going to lie to you. But overall, you will save time at the end. Remember, you're not going to have to spend time searching through a 300-page book or Googling for quotes that may or may not work for an essay. So ultimately, the extra 5 or 10 minutes that you put into a reading assignment will pay off when we start the essay. So as I begin to talk about the 7 different options you have for annotation, and remember again, you want to annotate once per page, I'm going to be giving you some examples. And for the purposes of this lesson, pretend that I just read an article or story about why the chicken crossed the road. So the first option you have for annotation is to just state an opinion or react. How does a passage make you feel? Describe the response it evokes from you. So in my chicken crossing the road passage, I could say, that's crazy, stupid chicken. The second option you have is to paraphrase content, which is a fancy way of summarizing the plot of what you just read. So I could, at the bottom of the page, say, the chicken crossed the road. A third option that you have is to make predictions. You can take a guess. What do you think is going to happen next? And it doesn't matter if your prediction is going to be right or wrong. Sometimes, more often when you predict incorrectly, it's more likely to stick with you what did happen. So for example, I bet the chicken's going to get hit by a car. The fourth option you have is to ask questions. You can direct questions to the author, the character, or even me. Why on earth did that chicken cross the road? A fifth option that you have is to make connections. So think about a personal experience, other books, movies, or current events that you can relate to what you just read. So for example, this is like the story I read in the 7th grade with the toad. The sixth option you have is to analyze the author's craft. And that's a really sophisticated way of saying, look for the use of literary devices, similes, foreshadowing, personification, metaphors. Running around like a chicken with its head cut off is a simile. And the final and perhaps the most sophisticated type of note-taking is remarking on repeated topics. So as you're reading, you may notice that the author brings up similar subjects frequently at different points in the text. You should make note of when this happens and think about how this topic could be important to the overall work. Tracking this topic could give you good evidence for an essay at the end of the unit. So for example, this chicken does a lot of traveling. Maybe the idea of a journey is significant in the story. So what I have for you now is a sample passage with some annotation examples. And normally, remember, I'm asking you to annotate once a page. I couldn't really put that into a video lesson. So what I have is one passage, and I've tried to use the 7 different methods so that you could see what each looks like within the context of an article that we may read for class. So this is an article by Nicole Yoon, the author of The Sun is Also a Star. So at the very beginning of the passage, I just state my opinion. I agree. She makes the point that the world is a very divisive place, especially politically. I kind of agree with that. Then at the very bottom, I reflect on the content and just explain what the passage is about. For my third thing that I chose to do, I made a prediction. Yes, I think that Daniel and Natasha are romantic, but I think it's going to be because of their differences. The fourth type of annotation that I made was a question. So Yoon remarked in this passage that people that are different perhaps shouldn't be trusted, and she had heard that a lot before. So I was curious how she perhaps was seen as different by other people. My fifth choice was a connection, and I wrote about I know why the cage bird sings. Yoon mentioned Maya Angelou in the passage, and so I thought it would be important to talk about how I connected to another Maya Angelou book that I had read. So for my sixth annotation at the very top, I thought about analyzing the author's craft, and the title, The Sun is Also a Star. Perhaps it's a symbol, because the sun seems different, but it's just like any other star. For my seventh annotation, I thought about the repeated topic of truth, and that maybe this book exposes truth or overlooked reality. So now that you've seen some samples of annotations, I hope you have a better idea of how to be an active reader and make an annotation once per page as you do your own reading.